Why are we here? Discover the Buddha's answer to life's biggest question. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a never-ending loop of struggle and uncertainty? No matter what you do, something always seems to slip away, leaving you questioning, why am I here? What's the point of all this effort if it all fades away in the end? If you've ever been at a crossroads, unsure about what life truly means, then this video is for you. Today, we're going to unravel the profound mysteries of life, guided by one of the most influential figures in history. The Buddha, his teachings have transcended time and culture, offering insight into the very fabric of our existence. But here's the catch: this isn't just philosophy, it's a roadmap to peace, a pathway to freedom that anyone can follow. What if I told you that there is a way to break free from the cycle of suffering and dissatisfaction? That liberation isn't a far-off dream, but a reality you can experience right now. In this video, we're going to dive into powerful Buddhist teachings, lessons that can reshape how you see yourself and the world around you. You'll learn how meditation, mindfulness, and compassion can free you from the endless cycle of desire, attachment, and frustration. But there's more. This video is packed with insights you won't find anywhere else. If you've been seeking clarity, inner peace, or a deeper connection to life, stay with us. Trust me, by the time you finish watching, you'll have the tools to change your perspective on everything. So hit that like button, make sure to subscribe, and let's take this journey together. Keep watching to unlock the secrets to living with purpose and harmony. Watch until the end to discover the truth that could change your life forever. Chapter 1: The Unavoidable Question, Why Do I Exist? At some point in life, most of us experience a profound silence that seems to echo within, especially in the stillness of the early morning hours, perhaps around 3 a.m. It's not just the quiet of the world outside, but something deeper, something pressing against your chest, making the weight of your thoughts feel unbearable. You might lie there, staring at the ceiling, and ask yourself, if everything will eventually fade away, what's the point of it all? This question, though simple, is powerful and universal. In those moments of silence, when everything you've worked for or dreamed about feels fragile and transient, the true meaning of life comes into question. The Buddha did not shy away from this discomfort. In fact, he taught that this sense of unease, this underlying discomfort that arises from the fleeting nature of our lives, is not a mistake. It's a fundamental truth about existence. In Buddhism, this concept is called dukkha, often translated as suffering, though its meaning stretches far beyond mere physical pain or emotional distress. Dukkha refers to the reality that life, as we know it, is unreliable and impermanent. Everything from our health to our relationships to the fleeting moments of joy is always changing. The things we hold dear slip away, and in the end, everything we've worked so hard to build eventually fades. When we ask ourselves, why do I exist? In the midst of this impermanence, we are confronting this very truth. The Buddha's teachings tell us that this discomfort, this existential questioning, isn't something to be avoided or fixed. Rather, it is an invitation to understand the very nature of life. The unease we feel about life's fragility is part of the human experience. It's woven into our existence, and when we acknowledge it, we begin to see life more clearly. Life in its essence is in constant flux. Our bodies grow older, our minds shift, and relationships change. One day we may feel like everything is in place, the next we may feel lost or disconnected. Even our sense of self is not a fixed entity. It changes over time, influenced by the circumstances and experiences we encounter. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to accept this reality of change, to stop trying to resist it, and to stop grasping for permanence in a world where nothing lasts. It's common for people to seek stability and security in an ever-changing world, to yearn for something they can hold on to, something they believe will offer them lasting happiness. But the Buddha teaches that the more we cling to things, the more we try to control life and hold onto the temporary, the more we set ourselves up for suffering. The happiness we so often chase, the relationships we desperately want to preserve, and even the image of who we think we are, all inevitably change. When we cling too tightly, the inevitable reality of change becomes a source of sorrow rather than peace. But the Buddha's path is not one of despair. It's a path of understanding and acceptance. Rather than trying to control the forces of change, we are invited to live in harmony with them. Peace comes not from resisting change, but from accepting it as part of life. Life's impermanence is not a curse. It's simply the way things are. The Buddha's wisdom is not about avoiding the pain of change, but about recognizing that change is not our enemy. It is through accepting impermanence that we can cultivate peace within ourselves. There's a story of a great Zen master who, after spending many years with his beloved dog, heard of the dog's death. Upon hearing the news, he simply remarked that was a good dog. He didn't mourn excessively or become overwhelmed by grief. Instead, he accepted the dog's passing as part of the natural cycle of life. This acceptance was not a lack of love, it was a deep understanding of impermanence. The Zen master did not cling to the idea of the dog. He understood that everything is temporary, and that understanding allowed him to appreciate the time he had with the dog without becoming attached to its presence. This acceptance of impermanence can be one of the most liberating teachings in Buddhism. When we stop clinging to things, we open ourselves to experiencing life more fully. We no longer see the passing of people or things as a tragedy to be avoided, but as a natural flow of life. Each moment becomes precious, not because it will last forever, but because it is unique and fleeting. In order to understand this fully, we must come to terms with the fact that nothing in life is permanent, not even our most cherished moments. This is not meant to make us fearful or nihilistic, but to teach us the beauty of living fully in each moment. When we stop holding on to what cannot be held, we free ourselves to experience life with an open heart. We stop trying to control the future and begin to live with the understanding that every moment is an opportunity to grow, to love, and to experience life as it truly is. The Buddha's teachings remind us that we do not need to escape life or the inevitable changes it brings. Instead, we are called to embrace life just as it is. We are called to let go of the need for control, to release our attachments, and to live in the present moment. Only then can we truly experience peace, not through resisting life's changes, but through fully accepting them. So, when we lie awake at night, wondering about the meaning of our existence and feeling the weight of the world's impermanence, the Buddha's teachings offer a simple yet profound truth. Life is fragile, but that fragility does not make it meaningless. On the contrary, it gives life its preciousness. When we let go of our attachment to the unchangeable, we can live more fully, embracing each moment with gratitude, love, and understanding. Chapter 2: Why Are We Here? The Answer of Dependent Origination. Life is a series of interconnected moments, an intricate web of causes and conditions, each one shaping the next. This is the essence of the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination, Paticcasamuppada, their idea that nothing in life exists in isolation. Every moment, every choice, every thought is part of a much larger process, one that stretches far beyond our individual lives. Our existence is not random, nor is it governed by fate or some mystical force. Instead, it is a delicate dance of causes and effects, where each action ripples through the fabric of life, influencing what comes next. We often think of ourselves as separate individuals, as self-contained entities that make decisions based on free will and personal desires. But the Buddha taught us that we are not isolated. Our thoughts, our actions, and even our very identities are shaped by an interconnected network of influences that stretch back through time. From the moment we are born, we are part of this vast web, a web that includes the people around us, the conditions we find ourselves in, and the countless past actions, both our own and those of others, that have brought us to this point. Imagine for a moment a vast and intricate spider's web. Each thread is connected to every other thread, each part influencing the others. If one thread moves, it causes ripples throughout the web, affecting other parts in ways that may seem insignificant at first, but over time accumulate to create change. Similarly, our lives are part of this complex web of existence. Every decision we make, every action we take, no matter how small, sends ripples through the world, influencing not only our future but the future of others as well. There is no isolated event in this vast interconnected world. We are not separate from the world, we are part of it, continuously shaping and being shaped by it. This understanding challenges the notion of control that many of us hold so dear. We like to believe that we are the masters of our own destiny, that our thoughts, actions, and plans are the sole driving forces in our lives. But the Buddha warned us against this illusion of control. Much of what we think of as control is actually clinging, an attachment to outcomes, desires, and expectations that keeps us locked in a cycle of striving. The Zen master's question encapsulates this beautifully. Does the wind move? The flag or your mind. In other words, when we believe we are in control, we are often not in control at all. It is our thoughts, our habits, and our past experiences that shape our actions far more than any conscious decision to direct our lives. Consider a story that illustrates this perfectly. A well-known Buddhist teacher once shared a moment of clarity when he realized that he had spent much of his life chasing after success and recognition. He had built his life around the idea that he could control his future through sheer will and effort. But one day, sitting in meditation, he had an insight. He had been living in a constant state of grasping. His thoughts about success, about what he should achieve, had shaped his entire life. Yet, when he let go of these expectations, he experienced a profound sense of peace, a peace that came not from achieving something, but from simply being. He realized that true freedom comes not from clinging to control, but from releasing the need to control the outcome of life. This is a difficult lesson to learn, especially in a world that prizes control and effort. We are taught from a young age that we must make things happen, that we must push and strive to get what we want. Yet, the Buddha's teachings invite us to look beyond this surface-level striving and to understand the deeper forces at play in our lives. Our attachment to control, to outcomes, and to our desires creates a cycle of suffering. It keeps us trapped in the illusion that we can dictate the course of our lives, when in truth, we are part of a much larger process, one that is constantly unfolding, one moment after the next. The liberation that the Buddha spoke of is not the freedom to control everything in our lives. It is the freedom that comes from letting go of our attachment to control and to begin living more mindfully in the present moment. This is where true freedom lies, not in our ability to control our circumstances, but in our ability to respond to life as it comes with awareness and acceptance. Think of a river. When you try to fight the current, when you struggle against the flow of water, you tire yourself out and make little progress. But when you allow the river to carry you, when you accept the flow and move with it, you move effortlessly, finding freedom in the current. Life is much the same. When we stop fighting the current of change, when we stop clinging to outcomes, we can experience the flow of life more fully. This is not to say that we stop making decisions or taking actions. Rather, it means we stop attaching ourselves to the results of those decisions. We act with intention, but we also release the need for control. This shift in perspective can be life-changing. When we begin to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, but as interconnected with all things, we begin to let go of the need for dominance over our own lives. We realize that we are not separate from the world around us, but part of it. And in this realization, we find a freedom that goes beyond the limitations of personal control. There is a subtle beauty in this understanding. It invites us to live with more ease, to stop striving so hard to manipulate life into our desired shape, and to instead allow ourselves to be shaped by the present moment. In doing so, we open ourselves up to a new kind of power, the power to respond to life with compassion, clarity, and understanding, without the heavy burden of attachment to the outcome. In the end, the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination asks us to acknowledge the vast web of interconnection that surrounds us, to understand that everything is linked, and to accept that our lives are not driven solely by our will, but by a complex interplay of causes and conditions. This understanding does not diminish our agency, it enhances it. For when we let go of the illusion of control, we open ourselves to a deeper, more authentic way of being in the world. The freedom we seek is not in grasping for control, but in releasing our attachment to it and learning to live with greater presence, wisdom, and compassion. And in doing so, we realize the truth that the Buddha pointed to, that our lives are not isolated but interconnected with everything. Each action we take, no matter how small, ripples through the web of life, creating a world of cause and effect that shapes us and shapes those around us. The question, why are we here, can only truly be answered when we see ourselves as part of this vast, interconnected whole, a flow that moves through us and around us, ever changing, ever unfolding. Chapter 3: Karma and Rebirth, the Flow of Action. Karma is one of the most central and profound teachings in Buddhism, yet it is often misunderstood in the context of Western thinking. Many people think of karma as a kind of cosmic bookkeeping system, a ledger of rewards and punishments, where good actions lead to rewards and bad actions lead to punishment. While that interpretation might seem intuitive, it oversimplifies the rich and nuanced concept of karma. In Buddhism, karma is simply the law of cause and effect, but more precisely, it refers to intentional actions, actions performed with our body, speech, and mind. To understand karma, we might think of it as a farmer planting seeds. If the farmer plants mango seeds, mango trees will eventually grow. If the farmer plants thorny bushes will rise. The type of seed determines the type of plant that grows. In much the same way, the actions we take, whether they are driven by kindness, anger, or indifference, have a direct influence on our lives. These actions are like seeds planted with the mind's intention, and they shape the course of our future. When the Buddha taught about karma, he was not teaching a system of external rewards or punishments. Rather, he was highlighting the truth that our intentions, whether kind or harmful, create patterns in the mind and shape our experiences in the world. It's not just the physical actions we take, but also the mental states, the desires, and the emotions that fuel those actions. If we are constantly angry, for example, we might make decisions that lead to isolation or conflict. If we cultivate generosity and compassion, our actions are more likely to bring us peace and harmony. Karma, therefore, isn't something abstract or mystical. It's a way of understanding the continuous flow of life. Every action, every thought, every decision we make leaves a trace. These marks create the conditions for future experiences, much like the seeds we plant determine what kind of trees will grow. The Buddha's teachings invite us to reflect on this continuous stream of action and intention, and to take responsibility for the seeds we plant, not just in the world, but also in our minds. Consider the story of a person who has suffered great hardship and pain, perhaps due to betrayal or injustice. This person, understandably, might harbor feelings of resentment and anger toward those who have wronged them. If these emotions are not acknowledged or released, they shape that person's future interactions with others. Their actions may become defensive, distrustful, or cynical, which may cause further suffering and conflict. The seeds of anger planted in the soil of their mind grow into resentment, and that resentment influences the relationships they encounter in the future. On the other hand, if this person is able to cultivate forgiveness, if they choose to understand that the suffering they experience is a part of life, their future actions will likely shift. They will no longer be driven by anger, but by a desire for healing and understanding. The seeds they plant through their thoughts and actions are rooted in compassion, and these seeds will bear fruit in their relationships and experiences. Through these examples, we begin to see how karma works, not as a punishment or reward, but as a natural law of cause and effect. Each action, whether motivated by anger or kindness, will shape the world we live in, as well as our inner experience. The Buddha's teachings emphasize the importance of mindfulness in every area of life, from the smallest thoughts to the largest decisions. If we are mindful of the seeds we are planting, we can create a future that is more peaceful, more compassionate, and more aligned with our true nature. Yet karma is not just about the consequences we face in this lifetime. The concept of rebirth comes into play, and with it, a deeper understanding of the continuity of our actions across time. Rebirth in Buddhism is often misunderstood. Many people think of it as the transmigration of a soul, a kind of eternal self that moves from one body to another across lifetimes. However, the Buddha's teachings are much subtler. There is no permanent, unchanging soul that moves from life to life. Instead, rebirth is like a river flowing continuously. The water in the river is never the same, but the river itself continues to flow. In the same way, our thoughts, desires, and actions flow from one moment to the next, carrying with them the consequences of the past and shaping the future. The cycle of birth, aging, death, and rebirth is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. In Buddhism, this cycle is known as samsara, the endless cycle of birth and death, suffering and joy. It is not isolated to a single lifetime. It is a continuum that stretches beyond any individual existence. Our actions, whether they are driven by attachment, desire, or wisdom, leave imprints that carry forward into the future, shaping our future experiences and the experiences of others. In this sense, the consequences of our actions extend far beyond our immediate lives, rippling across time. Take, for instance, the actions of a person who has lived a life rooted in greed and selfishness. The suffering caused by these actions does not disappear after death. It continues to affect the person's future experiences, just as the waves created by a stone thrown into a pond continue to ripple out. The seeds of greed and selfishness are planted, and they create conditions for future suffering, whether in this life or in a future one. In this way, the cycle of rebirth is a continuation of the seeds we plant, the intentions we carry, and the actions we take. On the other hand, consider a person who has lived a life of selflessness, compassion, and generosity. The seeds they plant, both in their mind and in the world, will yield a different kind of result. While the external circumstances of life may still bring challenges, the internal foundation of peace, wisdom, and compassion will lead them toward more harmonious experiences. The cycle of rebirth is not a cycle of punishment, but of continuation. The consequences of our actions continue to shape the life that comes next. This understanding of rebirth and karma encourages us to live mindfully in the present moment. It teaches us that our actions today are the seeds for tomorrow's experience. The Buddha's teachings invite us to take responsibility for the seeds we plant, to make choices that are aligned with compassion and wisdom, and to understand that every action we take is a reflection of the inner state we cultivate. In the end, karma and rebirth remind us that we are not isolated beings. We are part of an ongoing flow, a vast interconnected web that stretches beyond time and space. Our lives are shaped by the past, but they also shape the future. Each thought, each action, each word is a ripple in this web, and it is up to us to decide what kind of ripples we wish to create. The law of karma encourages us to act with mindfulness, to plant seeds of kindness and compassion, and to live in a way that honors the interconnectedness of all things. In understanding karma and rebirth, we come to realize that our lives are not separate or random. They are part of a vast, unfolding process, one where every action matters, and where our present moment is shaped by the past and shapes the future. The continuity of life through karma and rebirth offers us an opportunity, not only to understand the causes of suffering, but also to break free from the cycle and create a future filled with peace, wisdom, and compassion. Chapter 4: The 12 Links of Dependent Origination, How We Get Trapped. The Buddha's teachings on the cycle of suffering, encapsulated in the 12 links of dependent origination, offer us a map of how we get trapped in endless cycles of desire, attachment, and ultimately suffering. The core of this teaching lies in understanding that our suffering is not caused by external circumstances, but by our internal mental patterns, our ignorance, our cravings, our clinging. The Buddha did not simply point to the world outside of us as the cause of our distress, but rather he turned our gaze inward, urging us to examine the ways in which our minds shape our experience of life. The cycle begins with ignorance, not in the sense of a lack of knowledge, but a deeper, more fundamental blindness. It is ignorance of the true nature of reality, an inability to see things as they truly are. This ignorance isn't just a failure to understand, it's a distortion, a fundamental misunderstanding of the way life works. We fail to recognize that everything is impermanent, that we are not separate from the world, and that our attachments to things are the root cause of our suffering. When we are caught in this ignorance, we begin to form mental patterns that lead to further suffering. Out of this ignorance, mental formations arise. These are our habitual ways of thinking, our biases, our emotional tendencies. These mental formations shape the way we interpret the world. For example, if we constantly perceive the world through a lens of fear, we will interpret even neutral events as threats. If we are driven by desire, we may look at the world and see it only in terms of what we can get from it, what will bring us pleasure, and what will avoid discomfort. These mental formations are the lens through which we view everything, and they often distort our perception of reality. These mental formations give rise to consciousness, the spark of awareness that allows us to experience the world. It's not the same as simple awareness of external objects, it is the awareness that is shaped by our mental formations. We perceive the world through the filter of our biases, our fears, and our desires. If we look at the world through the lens of anger, everything will seem hostile. If we see the world through the lens of greed, we will find ourselves constantly grasping, always wanting more. From consciousness, we move into the next link, the mind and body. The mind and body are inseparable, interdependent aspects of our experience. The body is the vessel through which we experience the world, the senses through which we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. But the body is also conditioned by the mind. The way we perceive the world shapes our physical experience. For example, when we are anxious or fearful, our body responds by tensing up, our heart rate increases, and our breath becomes shallow. The mind and body are not separate entities, they are two sides of the same coin. As we interact with the world through our senses, we experience feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Our senses constantly provide us with information, and we react to this information emotionally. We like things that feel pleasant, and we dislike things that feel unpleasant. We may feel neutral towards things that don't evoke strong emotions. These feelings are not inherently good or bad, they simply arise as a natural part of our sensory experience. However, the way we respond to these feelings can lead us into trouble. This is where craving enters the cycle. Craving arises when we desire to hold onto what feels pleasurable and to push away what feels uncomfortable. When we crave something, we are not just experiencing a desire. We are investing emotionally in the idea that this particular object, experience, or state of being will bring us lasting happiness. Craving fuels the cycle of suffering because it is based on the false belief that happiness can be permanently obtained from external sources. When we don't get what we crave, we feel frustration, anger, or sadness. When we do get what we crave, the satisfaction is fleeting and we crave more. From craving comes clinging, the attachment to our desires. Clinging is the next step in the cycle, where we become so attached to our cravings that we can't let go of them. We identify with our desires, with the things we want, and we become deeply invested in obtaining them. Clinging isn't just about wanting something, it's about needing it to define our sense of self. If we cling to an idea of who we are, we can't let go of it, even if it causes us pain. Similarly, when we cling to objects, relationships, or experiences, we're bound to feel disappointment when they inevitably change or fade away. Clinging leads to becoming, the formation of new states of being. As we cling to our desires, we begin to shape our future experiences. We become someone who is constantly striving for more, who is defined by what we desire. We become entrenched in the patterns of craving and clinging, which create new identities, new attachments, and new forms of suffering. The more we cling, the more we become tied to the endless cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. From becoming comes birth. This is the birth of new experiences, new opportunities, and new forms of suffering. It is the continuation of the cycle, where we constantly give birth to new states of being based on our attachments and desires. Birth in this sense is not just the physical birth of a new being, but the birth of new situations, new experiences, and new suffering. As we keep clinging and craving, we continue to give birth to new cycles of desire and dissatisfaction. This cycle continues through aging and death. As we age, we become more aware of the impermanence of life, and we begin to feel the weight of our attachments more acutely. The more we cling, the more we suffer, and the inevitable end of all things, death, becomes a source of deep anxiety. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, and despair follow because we have built our lives around things that cannot last. We have clung to the idea that happiness lies in permanence, in holding on to things that are inevitably slipping through our grasp. But the Buddha didn't teach this cycle to leave us trapped. He taught it to show us a way out. Understanding this cycle is the first step in breaking free from it. When we begin to see the cycle for what it is, when we recognize where we are clinging, where our cravings arise, and where we are trapped in patterns of desire and attachment, we can begin to loosen the grip these forces have on us. The Buddha's teachings offer us a way out of this cycle. The path to liberation is not about resisting the changes of life, but about seeing them clearly. It is about recognizing that our suffering doesn't come from external circumstances, but from our attachment to those circumstances. When we can let go of our clinging, when we can release our desire to control or possess, we free ourselves from the cycle of birth, aging, and death, sorrow, and despair. The practice of mindfulness is key in this process. By becoming aware of our mental formations, our cravings, and our clinging, we can begin to create new habits of mind, habits based on wisdom and compassion rather than desire and attachment. Through mindfulness, we can begin to see the impermanence of all things and cultivate a deeper acceptance of life as it is. The Buddha's teaching on the 12 links of dependent origination offers us a map of our suffering and a path to freedom. When we understand how we get trapped in the cycle, we can begin to let go of our attachment to it and move toward a life of peace, wisdom, and liberation. Chapter 5: Liberation, Not Salvation, the Buddha's Path. The Buddha's teachings offer a radically different approach to the nature of life and the human condition than the traditional concept of salvation. In many religious traditions, salvation is seen as a final escape from the world, a reward bestowed upon us after death for living a virtuous life. The Buddha, however, did not promise a cosmic reward or a future paradise. Instead, he showed us a path to awakening to the true nature of life as it is here and now. This path to awakening is not one of escaping the world, but of seeing it clearly. In Buddhism, the world we live in is seen as a dynamic, impermanent reality. We are not meant to transcend the world or reject it as flawed. Rather, we are taught to face it with full awareness and embrace it as it is. Life, with all its joys, sorrows, and uncertainties, is not something to be avoided, but to be understood deeply. The Buddha's path invites us to awaken to the reality of suffering, to recognize its causes, and to discover a way out, not by fleeing from life, but by engaging with it fully, without the veil of ignorance, craving, or attachment. The Four Noble Truths are the foundation of the Buddha's teachings, and they serve as a guide to understanding the nature of suffering and the possibility of liberation. The first truth acknowledges that suffering, dukkha, is an inherent part of existence. We experience suffering in many forms: physical pain, emotional turmoil, and the deeper existential suffering that comes from our attachment to things that are fleeting and impermanent. This suffering is not just external hardship, but the internal dissatisfaction that arises from our inability to accept the changing nature of life. The second truth identifies the cause of suffering: craving or desire, tanha. This is the attachment to the things we think will bring us lasting happiness, whether it be wealth, relationships, power, or even our own sense of identity. The Buddha taught that suffering arises because we desire stability, permanence, and control in a world that is constantly changing. We long to hold onto what is fleeting, and when we are unable to do so, we experience frustration, disappointment, and sorrow. The third noble truth offers hope: suffering can end. The cessation of suffering is not a future event or a distant reward, but a possibility that can be realized in this very life. Liberation does not lie in the afterlife, but in the present moment. When we let go of our attachment to impermanent things, when we stop chasing after the mirage of lasting happiness, we can experience peace. This peace comes from a deep understanding of impermanence, a recognition that all things, including our desires and attachments, arise and pass away. By accepting this truth, we are no longer bound by our cravings, and we experience the freedom that comes with releasing them. The fourth truth provides the way to end suffering: the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is not a set of rules or commandments. It is a guide to living with wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. It is a way of living that aligns with the true nature of reality, not a means of escaping it. The Eightfold Path consists of 1. Right view, understanding the nature of suffering, its causes, and the possibility of liberation. This is the foundation of wisdom. 2. Right intention, cultivating intentions rooted in kindness, compassion, and non-attachment, and letting go of intentions driven by desire or hatred. 3. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and with mindfulness, avoiding harmful speech such as lying, gossiping, or using harsh words. 4. Right action, acting in ways that are ethical and harmless, refraining from actions that cause harm to others. 5. Right livelihood, choosing work that does not harm others and is in alignment with our values of compassion and kindness. 6. Right effort, developing positive mental states and striving to avoid unwholesome thoughts and actions. 7. Right mindfulness, being fully present and aware in each moment, paying attention to our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment. 8. Right concentration, cultivating the ability to focus the mind through meditation, developing the clarity and stability needed to see things as they truly are. The Buddha's path is not about fleeing the world or rejecting our desires and attachments altogether, but about transforming them. By cultivating mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we gradually loosen the grip that craving and attachment have on us. As we practice the Eightfold Path, we learn to see the world as it truly is. Impermanent, interconnected, and empty of fixed, unchanging essence. This awareness allows us to let go of our clinging and to live in harmony with the flow of life rather than fighting against it. The teachings on liberation are not about attaining something external. They are about realizing the potential for peace and freedom that already exists within us. Liberation comes from within, from the practice of awakening to the true nature of our minds and the world around us. As the Buddha said, the mind is everything, what you think you become. In this sense, the path to liberation is the path of transforming our minds, letting go of our attachments, and seeing life clearly without the distortion of our cravings and aversions. Consider the story of a young monk who struggled with his desire for material possessions. He lived in a monastery, surrounded by simplicity and peace, but he found himself yearning for the comforts of the world outside, luxurious clothes, fine food, and status. Every time he saw a person with something he wanted, a deep feeling of desire would arise, and he would struggle with feelings of frustration and inadequacy. One day, he spoke to his teacher about this internal battle, and the teacher gave him a simple yet profound piece of advice. Desire is not the problem, it's your attachment to it that creates suffering. When the desire arises, simply notice it without clinging to it. Let it pass like a cloud in the sky. The young monk began to practice this awareness, simply observing his cravings as they arose without identifying with them or acting on them. Over time, he noticed that the more he allowed his desires to arise and pass without attachment, the less power they had over him. He felt lighter, freer, and more at peace. His liberation was not an escape from desire, it was a shift in how he related to it. Instead of fighting his desires, he allowed them to be, and in doing so, they lost their grip on him. The Buddha's teachings guide us toward a similar transformation. Liberation is not about achieving some external goal or escaping the world we live in. It is about awakening to the reality of impermanence, recognizing the causes of our suffering, and letting go of the attachments that keep us trapped. This awakening is possible right now, in this moment, not in some distant future. By practicing mindfulness, cultivating compassion, and following the Eightfold Path, we can begin to see life as it truly is, and in doing so, we free ourselves from the cycle of suffering and move toward a life of peace and wisdom. Liberation, in this sense, is not a far-off destination. It is the process of awakening to the true nature of life, letting go of our attachment to fleeting things, and living with greater clarity and compassion in the present moment. It is a path that leads to the freedom of being fully alive, fully present, and fully at peace with the world just as it is. Chapter 6: The Freedom of Non-Attachment, the Power of Letting Go. At the heart of Buddhism lies the profound concept of attachment, our deep-rooted tendency to cling to people, possessions, experiences, and even to our own sense of self. This attachment is the primary source of much of our suffering. We attach ourselves to fleeting moments of happiness, hoping to hold on to them forever. We cling to identities that we believe define us, terrified of letting go, afraid that without them, we might lose ourselves. This drive to hold on to what is inherently temporary, in the hope that it will bring us lasting satisfaction, is the root of much human distress. The Buddha, in his infinite wisdom, taught that attachment lies at the core of suffering, or dukkha. He showed us that the reason we feel discontent is not because life is inherently broken, but because we fail to accept the impermanent nature of all things. The things we cling to, whether they are relationships, material possessions, or even our own identities, are all subject to change. Relationships shift, possessions fade, and our bodies and minds age. Yet we resist this inevitable truth, continuously trying to grasp at things that are slipping through our fingers. This resistance to change, to letting go, is where suffering begins. We build our lives around the things we want to hold on to, but in the process, we trap ourselves in cycles of anxiety, fear, and sorrow. Every time something changes or something we cling to slips away, we experience loss and grief. But the deeper suffering comes from our resistance to the inevitable, our refusal to accept life as it is. In the Buddha's path to freedom, the first and most crucial step is the practice of letting go. But let go does not mean rejecting life or detaching from the world in a cold or emotionless way. It is not about becoming indifferent or uncaring. Instead, it is about recognizing the truth of impermanence, that everything we hold dear, everything we love, is temporary, and because it is temporary, it is bound to change. This insight allows us to loosen our grip on the things we are attached to. Letting go means accepting that the things we cling to, whether they are desires, expectations, or identities, are transient. By recognizing their impermanence, we begin to loosen our hold on them. But this doesn't mean giving up on life. Rather, it means engaging with life without the expectation that things must remain fixed or constant in order for us to be happy. It's about embracing life as it is, moment by moment, rather than fighting against its natural flow. Imagine, for a moment, holding a cherished object, something that represents an important part of your life. Perhaps it's a photo of a loved one or an item that has a deep personal meaning. Now, gently imagine letting go of it, not in the sense of losing it, but simply releasing your tight grip on it. You don't have to throw it away, but simply allow it to rest in your hands without clinging. Notice the freedom that arises from this simple act of release. There is space now, space for peace, for presence, for connection. In letting go, you create room for the flow of life, and in that space, you experience freedom. This is the power of letting go. It's not about eliminating pain or desire, but about living with an open heart that is no longer burdened by the weight of attachment. The paradox of non-attachment is that, through the practice of letting go, we begin to experience a deeper sense of freedom and peace. This freedom is not the absence of all desires or emotions, but rather the ability to experience life without clinging to those desires. We start to see life with clarity, not through the lens of what we wish it to be, but as it truly is, impermanent, fleeting, and constantly changing. This insight frees us from the cycle of craving and suffering that comes from trying to hold on to things that cannot last. A beautiful story from the Buddhist tradition illustrates this practice. There was a monk who had spent years meditating in a remote monastery, dedicating himself to the practice of mindfulness and detachment. He had grown wise in the teachings of impermanence, and for years he lived in peace with the natural flow of life. One day, however, he heard that his beloved monastery was to be destroyed by a flood. All of the monks had to leave, and the monastery that had been his home for years would be swept away by the waters. When the monk received the news, he was not upset or angry. Instead, he stood at the edge of the river and watched as the waters rose, slowly engulfing the temple. He observed the destruction calmly, his mind not disturbed by the loss. He had spent so many years practicing the art of letting go that he had come to see that even his beloved home, the building where he had learned, grown, and found peace, was temporary. And though it held deep meaning for him, he did not cling to it. The monk felt no sorrow, only acceptance, and a sense of deep peace in witnessing the impermanence of life. This story is a perfect example of the freedom that comes with non-attachment. The monk did not seek to escape from his emotions or deny his connection to the temple. Rather, he had come to understand that the temple, like everything else, was transient. His peace came from embracing the truth of impermanence, from letting go of his attachment to the physical structure, and understanding that true peace comes from within, not from the things we hold onto in the world. This practice of non-attachment is central to Buddhist meditation and mindfulness. Through mindfulness, we train ourselves to observe our thoughts, feelings, and experiences without becoming attached to them. We begin to see them for what they are, temporary, ever-changing, and without intrinsic identity. By observing without attachment, we free ourselves from the cycle of craving, desire, and suffering. We can experience life as it is, without the weight of expectation, without the burden of wanting things to stay the same. The true freedom of non-attachment is not a detachment from life, but a deeper engagement with it. When we stop clinging, we begin to live more fully. We are able to experience each moment as it comes, without the need to control or resist it. We let go of our rigid ideas of how things should be and allow life to unfold naturally. This freedom opens the door to true peace, as we come to realize that peace does not come from holding on to things, but from the ability to let go and live in harmony with the flow of life. The lesson here is profound. In letting go, we create space for freedom, for joy, and for true connection with the world around us. Attachment may seem like a way to hold on to what we love, but it is in the release of attachment that we find the truest form of love, one that is not bound by fear, control, or the illusion of permanence. When we let go, we are not losing. We are gaining a deeper understanding of the transient nature of life and the freedom that comes with fully accepting it. Through the practice of non-attachment, we begin to understand that we do not need to cling to anything to experience happiness. True happiness is found in the peace that comes with letting go. Letting go is not about renouncing life. It is about living it more fully, more freely, and with an open heart, unburdened by the weight of attachment. Chapter 7: The Four Noble Truths, the Diagnosis and Cure for Suffering. The Buddha's teachings on suffering, though simple in their premise, are deeply transformative. The first of the Four Noble Truths lays the groundwork for all Buddhist practice, the recognition that suffering, dukkha, is an inherent part of life. At first glance, this truth may seem disheartening, a stark acknowledgement that life is not exempt from pain, loss, or difficulty. But rather than being a cause for despair, this teaching is an invitation to face the reality of human existence with clarity and compassion. The Buddha understood that suffering is universal, that no one is exempt from it. It is part of the human condition. We all experience it in one way or another, whether it is physical pain, emotional distress, or the deep existential conflict of our desires. Suffering arises from many sources. It can be the physical pain we feel when we are ill, the emotional heartbreak we endure when we lose a loved one, or the internal conflict that comes from the gap between how we wish life to be and how it actually is. This disconnect between expectation and reality is where much of our suffering originates. The more we try to control or cling to life, the more we experience this tension, this dissonance. We want stability in a world of change, permanence in a world of flux. We want to hold on to happiness, but happiness is fleeting. We want to avoid discomfort, but discomfort is inevitable. This constant struggle is the root of much of our pain. Take, for example, a simple experience we've all likely had, the sense of frustration when we can't get something we want, whether it's a material object, the approval of others, or a particular outcome in life. We strive, we work, we desire, but no matter how much we acquire or achieve, there is always something more we want. This constant striving leaves us exhausted, disillusioned, and feeling like there is never enough. The Buddha's teaching is not meant to depress us, but to free us from this endless cycle. He invites us to see that suffering is a shared experience, not something unique to us alone, and in doing so, we can approach our pain with greater understanding and compassion. This brings us to the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, craving, tanha. Craving is the constant desire for more pleasure, more comfort, more security, more validation, more of everything. It is the insatiable hunger that drives us to chase after external objects, relationships, and experiences, thinking they will fulfill us and bring us lasting happiness. But the Buddha taught that craving is never satisfied. The more we crave, the more we bind ourselves to it, caught in an endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. Craving isn't just about material things, it's also about intangible things: approval, recognition, power, and control. We crave experiences, but we also crave the idea of control over our circumstances, over our relationships, over our lives. We cling to the belief that if we can just control the world around us, we will find peace. But the truth is, no matter how much we accumulate, whether it's possessions, achievements, or even relationships, we are never truly content. The satisfaction is always temporary. The pursuit of craving only deepens the cycle of suffering because it leads to a belief that happiness is something external to us, something we can grab, possess, and hold on to. Yet the more we chase it, the more it slips through our fingers. To understand this, consider a story about a man who spent his entire life pursuing wealth and recognition. He achieved great success, amassing riches and a high status in society, yet he was never at peace. He was constantly anxious, worried about losing his wealth and position. One day he fell ill and had to spend several weeks in bed. During this time, he reflected on his life and realized that no matter how much he had accumulated, he was still unhappy. He had always believed that his wealth would bring him security and peace, but it had only brought him anxiety and a deep fear of losing what he had. It was in his illness, in his forced stillness, that he began to understand the truth of the Buddha's teachings. The craving for more only deepens suffering. His real challenge was not acquiring more, but learning to let go, to release his attachment to what he had, and to live with greater peace in the present moment. This brings us to the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, or the possibility of nirvana. Nirvana is not a place, nor is it a reward waiting for us in the afterlife. It is a state of being, a state of liberation. Nirvana represents freedom from the endless cycle of craving, attachment, and suffering. It is the peace that arises when we stop grasping at life, when we cease trying to hold on to what is fleeting. Nirvana is not an escape from life. It is the profound realization that life is impermanent, and when we accept this, we are free from the need to control it. Consider the example of a river flowing effortlessly downstream. The water never resists the flow, it simply moves with the current, adapting to the path it must take. Similarly, when we stop resisting life's inevitable changes, when we stop clinging to the past and projecting into the future, we begin to flow with life's natural rhythm. We no longer fight against the current of existence, but accept it with grace and presence. This acceptance is the key to liberation. The fourth noble truth shows us the path to end suffering, the Eightfold Path. This path is not a set of rigid commandments or external rules. Rather, it is a guide for living in alignment with the truth of reality. The Eightfold Path leads us away from the suffering caused by craving and attachment and toward the liberation of the mind and heart. The Eightfold Path consists of 8 practices, each designed to transform the way we perceive and interact with the world. 1. Right view, understanding the nature of suffering and its causes. This involves seeing life as it truly is, impermanent, interconnected, and empty of inherent permanence. 2. Right intention, cultivating intentions rooted in compassion, kindness, and wisdom. This is the motivation to act in ways that relieve suffering for oneself and others. 3. Right speech, speaking truthfully, kindly, and constructively. Avoiding speech that causes harm, whether through lies, gossip, or harsh words. 4. Right action, acting in ways that do not harm others. Living ethically, making choices that contribute to the well-being of all. 5. Right livelihood, engaging in work that does not cause harm, that is ethical and compassionate, and that aligns with the principles of kindness and integrity. 6. Right effort, cultivating wholesome mental states and letting go of unwholesome ones. This involves actively working to transform negative thoughts and emotions into those that promote peace and understanding. 7. Right mindfulness, being fully aware and present in each moment. This practice of mindfulness is about observing our thoughts, feelings, and sensations without judgment, allowing us to see things as they are. 8. Right concentration, developing mental focus through meditation. This is about training the mind to remain steady, clear, and undistracted so that we can see the truth more deeply. By following the Eightfold Path, we move gradually toward the cessation of suffering. The path teaches us how to live in harmony with reality rather than fighting against it. Each step on the path is a step toward greater clarity, greater compassion, and greater peace. The Eightfold Path doesn't promise instant liberation, but it offers a roadmap for transforming our minds and hearts, allowing us to live in a way that is aligned with the deepest truths of existence. In essence, the Four Noble Truths show us a diagnosis and a cure for suffering. They diagnose the root cause of our distress, craving, and attachment, and they offer a cure, a path of liberation through the practice of mindfulness, ethical conduct, and wisdom. The path is not easy, but it is the path that leads to freedom, to peace, and to the end of suffering. It is not a distant future achievement, but a present possibility, one that can be realized in this very life. Through understanding and practicing the Four Noble Truths, we can awaken to the true nature of life and experience the profound peace that comes with letting go of our attachments and living in harmony with reality. Chapter 8: The Role of Meditation in Liberation. At the core of the Buddha's teachings is the practice of meditation, a tool through which we can transform our minds and cultivate true liberation. Meditation is not a mere technique for relaxation or a way to escape the pressures of the world. It is a profound practice that helps us to see the world with clarity, free from the distortions of our attachments and desires. Through meditation, we can observe the fleeting nature of our thoughts, emotions, and experiences, allowing us to let go of our clinging to them. This process is central to the Buddhist path, and it is through this practice that we come to understand the nature of suffering and find the freedom to release it. When we meditate, we are invited to step back from the constant chatter of the mind. The world around us is filled with distractions, constant noise, competing demands, and expectations. In our busy lives, it can feel as if our minds are never still, constantly moving from one thought to the next, one worry to another. Meditation offers us a refuge from this whirlwind. It is a practice of stillness, a space where we can step away from the hustle and bustle and simply observe what is happening within us. We sit, close our eyes, and begin the process of noticing the sensations in our body, the thoughts that arise, the emotions that flow through us. At first, our experience in meditation may be overwhelming. Our minds are filled with distractions, desires, fears, and worries that we rarely pay attention to in our day-to-day lives. But this is exactly what meditation helps us with. It offers a space to recognize these mental patterns without being consumed by them. We learn to observe our thoughts and feelings as they come and go without clinging to them or rejecting them. This is the essence of mindfulness. Rather than becoming swept away by our emotions or mental states, we observe them with detachment. We begin to understand that we are not our thoughts. We are not the anger, the anxiety, or the desires that arise in our minds. We are the awareness that is present to them, the space in which they arise and pass away. Take, for example, a story from the life of the Buddha's disciple, Ananda. Ananda was known for his deep devotion to the Buddha, but he struggled with a persistent feeling of doubt. No matter how much he practiced, no matter how many teachings he received, the doubt remained. One day, Ananda went to the Buddha and confessed his frustration, asking how he could be free from his doubts. The Buddha, with great compassion, advised Ananda to sit in meditation, to observe his thoughts and feelings without judgment. He reminded him that the mind is like a wild elephant. It is difficult to control, but with patience and practice it can be trained. Over time, as Ananda meditated, he learned to observe his doubt without attaching to it, allowing it to arise and pass without being consumed by it. In this way, he gained a deeper understanding of the nature of his mind and the impermanence of his thoughts. Through meditation, we are trained to recognize that everything, our thoughts, our desires, our fears, is impermanent. They come and go like clouds in the sky. Just as we cannot hold onto a cloud forever, we cannot hold onto our thoughts and emotions either. When we meditate, we learn to release our attachment to these fleeting experiences. This practice is not about pushing away or suppressing our thoughts and feelings. It's about creating space between ourselves and them, allowing us to see them clearly for what they are, temporary, ever-changing, and ultimately not who we are. This is where the practice of letting go, so central to the Buddha's teachings, becomes a reality. In meditation, we begin to loosen the grip of attachment. We realize that the pain we experience does not come from external circumstances, but from our clinging to them. Meditation offers us the space to understand the Four Noble Truths on a deeper level. We begin to recognize the nature of suffering, the root causes of it, and the possibility of freedom. Through the practice of mindfulness, we see that suffering arises from craving, and that craving is born from our attachments to things that cannot last. By simply observing these attachments in meditation, we can begin to untangle them, slowly releasing the hold they have on us. Regular meditation practice deepens this understanding and becomes a way of life. It is not just something we do on the cushion, it extends into every moment of our day. The awareness we cultivate in meditation helps us see the interconnectedness of all things. It reminds us that we are not isolated beings, separate from the world around us. We are part of a vast, interconnected web, and our thoughts, actions, and intentions have far-reaching consequences. As we cultivate mindfulness, we begin to see how our mental habits shape our lives. When we become more aware of our thoughts and feelings, we begin to notice the patterns that bind us to suffering. We begin to recognize the habits of the mind that perpetuate craving and attachment, and we start to loosen our grip on them. Consider the story of a woman who struggled with anger. She had been through many painful experiences in her life, and anger became her default response to adversity. It wasn't until she began a regular meditation practice that she realized how tightly she was holding onto her anger. She started to notice in the stillness of meditation how anger would arise in her mind and body. At first, she resisted it, trying to push it away, but over time, she learned to simply observe it without judgment. Slowly, she began to understand that her anger was not something that defined her. It was just a passing thought, a fleeting emotion. Through the practice of meditation, she learned to release her attachment to anger, allowing it to come and go without it taking control of her actions. She discovered that by simply observing her anger without attachment, it lost much of its power over her. The practice of meditation, then, is a powerful tool for transformation. It offers us a way to see ourselves and the world as they truly are, not through the distorted lens of our attachments, desires, and fears, but with clarity and understanding. Through meditation, we come to see that we are not defined by our thoughts and feelings. We are the awareness that observes them, and it is through this awareness that we find freedom. The Buddha's path is a path of awakening, and meditation is the gateway to that awakening. It is not about escaping the world, but about engaging with it more deeply, more mindfully, and with greater compassion. Through meditation, we learn to recognize the impermanence of all things, to release our attachment to them, and to live in harmony with the flow of life. Meditation is not just a practice, it is a way of life, a constant reminder that we are not separate from the world, but part of a vast, interconnected whole. As we meditate, we awaken to the truth of our own nature and the true nature of life, and in doing so, we find the peace that lies beyond attachment and suffering. Chapter 9: Compassion and the Interconnectedness of All Life. Compassion, karuna, lies at the very heart of Buddhism. It is the final, yet perhaps the most transformative, aspect of the Buddha's path. While wisdom gives us the clarity to understand the impermanent and interconnected nature of existence, compassion is its natural outgrowth. When we deeply comprehend that life is full of suffering, and that all beings are bound by the same cycle of desire, attachment, and loss, our hearts naturally swell with empathy. We recognize that others, like ourselves, are struggling, and our hearts reach out to them. This empathy is not born of pity or charity, but of a shared understanding of the human condition. The Buddha did not teach compassion as an act of charity where we simply give from a place of abundance. Instead, compassion is an active response to the suffering we see around us, an understanding that we are not separate from the pain of others. Compassion is not about feeling sorry for someone from a distance, but about recognizing their suffering as part of our own, as an expression of our shared humanity. It's the understanding that every being, no matter their form, experiences pain, fear, and longing. This recognition naturally stirs a desire to alleviate that suffering in whatever way we can. One powerful Buddhist story illustrates this concept. A young monk, once revered for his wisdom, wandered into a village known for its cruelty. Here, the people were notorious for their harsh treatment of travelers, leaving them hungry, beaten, and abandoned. On his arrival, the villagers eyed him suspiciously, but he remained calm and asked for no special treatment. The villagers, seeing this, mocked him, yet the monk simply smiled, offering words of kindness in return for their cruelty. A young boy in the village, curious about the monk's serene demeanor, asked him why he did not respond with anger or fear. The monk replied, "When you are given a gift, it is your choice whether to accept it or reject it. You are offering me your anger, but I choose not to accept it. I choose compassion." This act of non-attachment to the harshness around him was not weakness, but the deepest form of compassion, an awareness that the villagers' suffering and cruelty stemmed from ignorance, not from true malice. In Buddhism, compassion is not confined to feelings alone, it is a practice. When we cultivate compassion, it is not just a passive feeling of empathy, but an active, intentional effort to alleviate suffering wherever we find it. The Buddha taught that true compassion begins with ourselves. How can we extend compassion to others if we are unable to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding? Often, we are our harshest critics, carrying heavy burdens of guilt, shame, and self-blame. The practice of compassion starts by learning to treat ourselves with love, forgiveness, and patience. Only when we can offer kindness to ourselves can we truly offer it to others. Think of a parent who cares for their child. When the child is hurt, the parent feels deep empathy and seeks to alleviate the child's pain. Compassion in this sense is instinctual. It comes from a deep understanding of the shared experience of suffering. Similarly, when we begin to understand our own pain and suffering, we naturally extend the same kindness and care to those around us. If we can be gentle with ourselves, we can extend that same gentleness to others. But compassion in Buddhism goes beyond personal suffering and extends to all beings, humans, animals, and even the environment. The Buddha taught that all things are interconnected, bound together by the law of dependent origination. Just as our own lives are shaped by countless causes and conditions, our family, our environment, the choices we make, so too are the lives of others. There is no separation between us and others. When we harm another, we harm ourselves, When we bring peace to another, we bring peace to ourselves. This interconnectedness compels us to consider our actions carefully. Every action we take has an impact, not only on ourselves, but on the world around us. Our words, our deeds, and even our thoughts ripple out into the world, affecting others in ways we may not always see. In the same way the actions of others impact us, our suffering is not isolated, it is part of a larger whole, and so is our happiness. Take, for example, the story of a community that struggled with the consequences of environmental destruction. For years, a group of farmers had been cutting down trees to expand their fields. In their desire to improve their lives, they failed to see the long-term consequences of their actions on the environment. Slowly the land became barren, the rivers dried up, and the animals fled. The farmers' lives became harder, their crops withered, and their livelihoods were at risk. One day, a wise elder spoke to the community about the interconnectedness of all beings. Just as we depend on the land for our crops, so too does the land depend on the trees for nourishment. When we harm the trees, we harm ourselves. When we protect them, we protect our future. With this realization, the farmers began to shift their practices. They planted new trees, restored the land, and learned to live in balance with the environment. Their work became a reflection of their compassion, not just for their families, but for the world at large. In nurturing the land, they nurtured their own well-being and that of future generations. This story underscores the Buddhist understanding that compassion extends far beyond human interactions. The interconnectedness of all life means that when we act with compassion, we contribute not only to the well-being of others, but also to the well-being of the planet and all living beings. We begin to see that our actions, no matter how small, are part of a much larger tapestry of life, and that each thread we weave influences the whole. Compassion becomes a responsibility, one that we carry with us in every interaction, every choice, and every thought. The Buddha's teachings urge us to act with compassion in all areas of life, to live ethically, and to care for the world around us. Compassion is not merely a feeling we have when we see suffering, but a practice that transforms our hearts and minds. It is a call to action, a reminder that each of us has the power to alleviate suffering and contribute to the healing of the world. In the final analysis, compassion is not just a beautiful ideal. It is the foundation of a meaningful, connected, and harmonious life. It invites us to see the world with new eyes, to recognize that the suffering of others is our suffering, and their happiness is our happiness. It encourages us to step beyond our personal concerns and take responsibility for the world we share. When we act with compassion, we contribute to the well-being of all, creating a ripple effect that can transform not only our own lives, but the lives of others. This is the essence of Buddhism, the realization that we are all interconnected, and that by alleviating the suffering of others, we also bring about our own liberation. In the end, the question, why are we here, isn't one that can be answered by intellect alone. No book, no lecture will ever fully answer it, but the Buddha's teachings. They point us toward a deeper, far more profound truth, one that can only be realized through lived experience. Our existence is not random, nor is it a burden we carry alone. It is, in fact, an opportunity. An opportunity to awaken, to see the world and ourselves not as lost, but as part of an unfolding story of awakening. A chance to break free from the relentless cycle of craving and suffering that traps us in endless loops of desire and fear. The path to liberation, yes, is not simple, but it is open to everyone. Every moment, every step we take holds the potential for transformation. It begins with one thing, a shift in perspective. A willingness to let go of attachments, to embrace the ever-changing nature of life, and to discover peace in the impermanence of everything around us. Through mindfulness, meditation, and compassion, we can awaken. And here's the secret, it's not some distant fantasy. Liberation is not something waiting for us in a far-off tomorrow. It's something we can realize right now, in this very moment. The Buddha's final words to his disciples were simple but infinitely powerful. Be lamps unto yourselves, work out your own liberation with diligence. And there, my friends, lies the truth. Each of us is responsible for our own awakening. The path is always before us, as close as our next breath, our next step, our next act of kindness. So the question isn't whether we will find the answer. The real question is, will we walk the path? If you found this video valuable, if you felt that stir of curiosity or insight, don't let it end here. Let this be the first step. Hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on future revelations. Remember, the journey begins with a single step, and it's up to you to take it.